This is Basic Editing 101. Let's get into it. Hey guys, how y'all doing out there? It's time for another tutorial from Pinnacle Studio Pro. Alright peeps, I'm giving you all the editing love you need with the basic editing in Pinnacle Studio 18 Ultimate. Let's jump off into the software. Welcome to Editing Basics 101. Let's get into it. Anytime you're going to start a video, you got to set up your project. Setting up your project ensures that the recording device that you selected and Pinnacle Studio are in sync with one another. So that means that you got to know what your device recording settings are. The resolution, frame rate, whether it's interlaced, whether it's progressive, things like that. To make sure that Pinnacle Studio 18 is set up correctly, you go to Setup, Control Panel, and then you go to Project Settings. Under Video Standard, you want to select the resolution, frame rate, and whether interlaced, progressive, whether you just want to do NTSC, whether you want to do PAL. Basically, you want to set it up to match what you did with your recording device. And mine is 1920 by 1080 30p, so that's what I'm rolling with. Pinnacle Studio 18 does have a failsafe in place. You have a detect format from first clip. So if all your clips are going to be the same and you know that, as long as you got this box checked, then Pinnacle Studio 18 will go ahead and say, I recognize that as this, and it'll set up your project for you. Once you're done, click OK. Now, since editing is done in the Edit tab, it's also done in the Author tab, but since it's mostly done with most people in the Edit tab, I'm going to stick to that tab and talk about it. First, we got your library window. This shows the media that you selected from the watch folder location that you chose. If you go to Navigation, you have all of the folders that are in your watch folder and you select the one that you want. If you're already on a tab, it will overwrite that tab and add the new location. And then you have your tabs here for all of the media that you selected from your watch folders. If you want to add a new tab and add more media instead of overwriting any of the existing ones, you just click on the Add New Tab button and it'll add a new tab. It'll default to media and you choose where you want to go and add the media from. Now, the preview window is where you get to see the footage from either the library window or the timeline, depending on what you selected. Now, you can see right now it says I have nothing selected. Well, if I click on one of these items in the media window, then it stays on source, and now I can preview it from here. I can click play. I can click play here. I can scrub it here if I want to. All type of different ways I can view it. If I want to view what's in the timeline, I just click timeline. Depending on where my playhead is, it will preview the video in the timeline. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Now that we're into the timeline, let's talk about the timeline tools and let's talk about what it does for you. First off, toolbar. A lot of different tools you can use in a timeline. The first one is to customize the toolbar. You can select which items you want to show or not show in the toolbar. Then you got your project settings. If you click on project settings or timeline settings, excuse me, even I can make a mistake once in a while. If you click on the timeline settings button, then you get to change the different settings of the timeline. So if you forgot to do it, set up your project and you want to do it from here, you can. And then you got your navigator button, which lets you choose between storyboard mode and timeline mode. So if I go to the storyboard view, what I get is a representation of each video clip in thumbnails. So I can move these thumbnails around and it'll move around the clips on the timeline. And if I click on a different storyboard button on a different track, then it'll just show the videos in that track. And then I can go back to my timeline view. And voila, good to go. Next, you got your audio button here. So this is the audio for each track. You can change the volume here by clicking on the button. Then you got Score Fitter. So Score Fitter lets you add royalty-free music tracks to your videos. And then you got your title button. If I place my playhead somewhere and I select a track, if I click on the title button, it will add a title to that section. It'll open up the title editor for me to go ahead and make this changes, selections to the title as I wish. Then I got my voiceover button. So if I want to do a voiceover of narration or whatever I want to do, I can use this button to do that. So then I got my mark in and my mark out buttons. So this is useful if I want to export just part of the project that I'm working on and I want to view each frame within a timeline. If I click on the mark in button, it'll trim the project up to the point where I have my playhead. If I put my playhead at another position and click on mark out, it'll trim the project up to that position as well. If I click on export, then it'll take me to the exporter and it will only export this part of the video. Then I got my clear mark in, mark out button, so I can remove those. I got my razor blade that I can use to split clips, and I will talk to that a little bit later. Got my delete button or my trash bin that I can delete clips or parts of clips. I got my snapshot button. So if I want to take a picture of a frame and save it as a JPEG, I can click on the snapshot button and it will create a snapshot of just that frame where my playhead was located at, and it will save it to a location that I select from the project settings in Pinnacle Studio. Also got my marker button. So if I want to remember a certain point in a video for later, like I want to stop it at a certain beat or a certain place, and I'm going to do some edits there later, or I'm going to move another clip up to that position, then I can click my marker button and it'll add a marker down here on the timeline that I can go back to whenever I want to. I can just click on it. It'll take my playhead right to that position so I can get exactly where I was before if I need to. And then I can remove that. And then if I am in, depending on what mode I'm in, I have the trim button for trim mode, which I'll talk to later. We got the dynamic transitions button, which is for dragging and setting the durations of your transitions. You can turn it off and on. Then you got your magnetic snapping. So if I want things to just snap together, I don't have to move it exactly right there. As I get closer to it, it'll just snap it right into place. Then I have my audio scrubbing. If I scrub the video, do I want to hear the audio when I scrub it? I have it off so you don't hear any audio when I scrub it. If I turn it on, you'll hear the audio when I scrub it. And then I have my different timeline modes. All right. And I'm going to talk about the timeline modes a little later on. Now, one of the great things about Pinnacle Studio 18 Ultimate is that it has unlimited timeline tracks. So if I want to add a track, I can just click on the add a track button here, and it'll add a track to the top. All right, so now I have a new track here. And if I wanted to add a track somewhere else, let's say I wanted to add one below this one, I can just select this track, right click on it, and do insert new track above or below. If I click on below, it'll add one below it. The way Pinnacle Studio looks at your video clips is from the top down. What that means is if I add a video clip above another clip, that's the clip that's going to be seen. So as you can tell, if I scrub my timeline, I got my cows, and then I got this beautiful waterfall here. But my Pinnacle Studio intro is coming up. And if I hit that, guess what? Now I can't see anything beneath it. All I can see is the Pinnacle Studio Pro intro. If I add a fade on here, I can just drag that, then you can basically see both of them through the fade, Or if I have something that has transparency, then you'll be able to see the thing below it and the thing above it. That's called a composite. So if I drag my playhead here, where the cows are, once I hit this clip that's above it, this clip has transparency in it. It's a frame, and I can see the cows through the middle of the frame. Let's talk a little bit about the tools in the preview window real quick before I get into the other things here. So the preview window has a lot of buttons down here that you can use for different things. First one's the play button. Click on play, and it'll play the video, and then you can hit pause. You can also use your space key on your keyboard to play video, and you can also hit the space key again to pause it. Now, if you want to navigate the timeline, you got a few different options here. You got this button here, which is go to start. If you click that, it'll go to the start of the video. You got one called go to end. If you click that, it'll go to the end of the video. On your keyboard, you have a home key. If you click on the home key, it'll take you to the beginning of the video. And if you click on the end key, it'll take you to the end of the video. You also have this jump backward button. What this button does is it jumps backwards between scenes or splits, or clips, whatever you want to call it. If you click on jump backwards, you'll see that it goes between each clip. And if I click on jump forward, it'll jump forward between each clip. I also have the option to use the page up button. It'll jump backwards between clips. And I have the option to use the page down button, which will make it jump the other way. Now, I also have the ability to use the frame button. So if I step one frame back, you'll see that as I click on this, got to click on it a lot to see anything. You can see that it's moving one frame at a time. I also have the button to move one frame forward. I can also use my mouse scroll wheel to move. So if I scroll down, it'll move forward. If I scroll up, it'll move backwards. Now, I can also stretch out my timeline from the preview window, or I can stretch out my timeline from the bottom of the timeline tracks. So you can just stretch this out and you can see each frame one at a time. Now each frame is now being represented by a little mark here. So if I use my scroll wheel on my mouse, you'll see that the playhead jumps to each one of these marks each time I do it. Also, using the step button, it'll do the same thing. And I can also use my minus keys to make the timeline small, and my plus key to make the timeline big, besides just stretching it out from the bottom. Speaking of the timeline and how you can navigate it, there's different timeline modes. The first mode is Smart Movie mode. So in Smart Movie mode, Pinnacle Studio tries to determine what you want to do when you add a clip to the track or to the timeline. Wherever you add it, it'll either move stuff around like you just saw, or it'll let you split things or overwrite things. It basically tries to figure it out on its own. If you put it at the end, it won't move anything. Next mode is called Insert mode. So in Insert mode, it's going to insert it. No matter where you put it, it's going to move the other thing. It'll split it in half. So if you want to insert something between things, this is the mode to use. It'll move things around based on where you put it. And then the final mode is Overwrite mode. So when you're in Overwrite mode, it won't move anything around if you have spaces between things. So before, it would make this jump forward. Now it's just staying there. Now if I try to put it over something, it'll split it or move it or whatever it needs to do. But if you're trying to keep things in the same place and move things between each other, override mode is the best mode to be in. So you see this little line that's going here. This is called a render line. Whenever you move a clip or you add a clip to the timeline, depending on your render settings, you'll see that line that just disappeared. You want to wait for that line to disappear before you start previewing things, because what it is doing is it's actually using the memory or RAM on your computer to render the video and basically let you see it in real time when you play it. If you start viewing things before that, it's not going to be viewable in real time. All right. And you also want to let everything render before you export and make any videos, because it'll just be smoother and cleaner. There's a lot of different ways that you can add things to the timeline. You can either just left click something that's in the library window and drag it down. You can right click something in the media window and or library window and click on send the timeline. It'll send it to the track you have selected. You see, I had this one down here selected. Or if you click on it, select the track, place your playhead where you want. You can click on the button here to send it to the timeline if you're previewing it in the preview window. So a lot of different options to get that done. Now, whenever you add something to the timeline, you get this little green check mark, which tells you that, hey, the thing that you just added, it's in the timeline now, buddy. You're good to go. Now, if you have anything with a audio wave in it, you can see it down here underneath the video clip. None of these other video clips have audio in them. This is the only one that does. And you can use this volume keyframing button if you just want to adjust the audio in this one clip instead of doing the whole track. So if I enable this, if I click on this little green line, it turns white, and now I can move the volume up or down. I can add a keyframe, and I can add another keyframe, and I can fade the audio if I wish to do so. Or if I just want the audio to drop out at a specific point, I could just leave one keyframe or two, and I could just drag it down, and now the audio is muted right there, and it comes back in right there. A lot of different options for you to do with the audio in Pinnacle Studio 18. Let's talk about transitions. Right now, the way that I have these videos set up is there is no transition. It just goes from one video to the next. If I hit play, you'll see the video to the next video, and that's about it. They just go from video to video. Nothing else to it. Now, I can also add transitions to my videos. There's several different ways. I can place my cursor at the corner of a video, and at that position, you'll see a little caret and an arrow. If I drag this, then what it'll do is it'll create a dissolve. Basically, this video will lead into this video, and the video on the right will fade in. So if I click on play, after I let it render, you'll see it dissolves to the next video. Now, I can also fade both of them. If I fade both of them, it's just going to fade to black and then fade back to the next video. So this one fades to black and the next one fades in. Now, if you really want to get like crazy jazzy with your transitions and stuff, there's a whole lot of them that you can choose from in Pinnacle Studio. So I'm going to add a tab here, and I'm going to go to my transitions. I'm just going to click on transitions here. There's a whole bunch of different transitions here. So I can drag any transition down to a clip, and now it'll automatically add that transition, and it automatically adds the timing for the transition that you selected in your setup menu under transition defaults. So if I hit play here, you'll see it's going to be a page peel, boom, to the next video. So that's freaking beautiful. Now, if I double click on the transition that I have here, it's going to bring up some options here. So let's just talk about the options here. Since this is a transition out to the next one, I'm going to click on transition out. And now you see that I have some different options for this transition. I can change the progress of it, can make it longer. I can change the peel of it, can change the backside, a color if I want to. If I want to just make it longer, I can left click and hold my mouse down and drag this out so that the transition is longer. So a lot of different options I can do with that. I'm going to click on OK. And you'll see the transition got longer. So if I right click on the transition, I can go to transition and go to edit. I got options here to reverse it, change the duration, things like that. Let's talk about editing the actual videos that you have in here. If I place your playhead somewhere, you can click on the razor blade to split a clip. When you split that clip, you can move it where you want to, or you could just delete it and get rid of it. If you didn't like that, then you can just do your undo button and bring it back. If you hit undo again, it'll remove the split. But let's say I split a clip and now I did 10 other things and I'm like, I don't want to hit undo 10 times to fix that. Then I got to do these 10 other things over again. You could just trim the video back to where it was. So you can place your cursor at the end of the video or the beginning of the video until you get a line and an arrow. Hold your left mouse down and drag it back out. Now the video is back to where it was before. It's a cool way to trim your videos. Now, when you're in insert mode, you also have this trim button here. If I click on this trim button, it'll bring up a trim window, and I can use these buttons to either step 1 frame backward, 1 frame forward, or step 10 frames forward or 10 frames backward to go ahead and trim the video how I wish to do so from right here. It's pretty cool too. Also, if I wish to do so, let's say I have this video here and I want to place another video in the same track in between them, but I don't want to place all of it. I want to trim some of the video. If I click on the video here in the library window and I click on the dual mode button, it's going to open up and show that video and the video or the place where it's going to come in at. So I can use my little trim, insert in and insert out things to trim my video. And I can, let's say, move my playhead where I want the video to go. And then I hit insert or send a timeline. And it'll send it in right in between those two. And it's trimmed only for the part that I want it to be in there is there now. That's it, people. Video editing basics 101. If you didn't know, I also have my own YouTube channel. It's called Pinnacle Studio Pro. You can head on over there and check out all of my tutorials, my effects, my equipment reviews, software reviews, all that good stuff. You're going to love it. You can also check me out on Facebook, Google+, Twitter. You can check me out on my website, PinnacleStudioPro.com. You can hit me up all over the world, people. All right? Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.